Hi, I'm Emmy.
And I'm James.
And welcome back to The Bestiary, the monster manual A through Z.
And today we're looking at angels. Now, angels in the tabletop RPG sense are rather more defined than we might think of them in a theological or religious sense in our world. So, Emmy, what are angels?
Absolutely. Angels are something that are created specifically by a good god to serve them and their will. So they're made of celestial, divine stuff. Don't portmanteau those words, kids. And they serve that god pretty much in their entirety. They are always lawful good, even if the god that created them is not, although a good god can only create an angel. So they follow out their will exactly.
But it's interesting because the lawful side of them is, very much them leaning towards following their set purpose as defined by their god, right?
Exactly.
But then there are questions raised about, well, do they have free will? Because, of course, angels can fall. Mm-hmm. Especially recently we've had this expanded with the release of the Descent into Avernus campaign. One of the principal opposition forces that you're going to face is Zariel, the fallen angel that now rules the first plane of hell.
Yes.
So, there are questions here as to where free will comes in. How would you interpret that?
I absolutely think they do. I think that, especially considering they talk about this a lot in here, that angels do fall, and that they can not just fall into evil, they can just even fall to the mortal realm. One mistake, and it kind of happens automatically. So it's something that just happens to them, and that's another place that you can encounter them as well as a player, is that you might just be talking to an angel, and you might not even know it.
That for me, actually, I think particularly coming from a DM perspective, is one of the really interesting and things that has a lot of potential when you're looking at angels, particularly sort of the lower level ones like Deva's, whose central role often is to kind of hide in plain sight and just, do good among the people without necessarily revealing their divine nature. You could be talking to this celestial being and have absolutely no idea. And so then there's a lot of potential as a DM for that reveal, either as an ally or as an enemy, depending on on the context of that meeting.
Absolutely. And I know that then brings us into our next segment, which is going over the individual types of angels. And there are 3, and they all have a very different purpose. So the first one is the Deva. And they are mostly defined as a messenger for a particular god. So they come to guide and to influence, mostly. The chances of you fighting one, you're probably done goofed. I imagine, unless you're running an evil campaign, you're probably more likely to fight alongside one. If you have an Aasimar character, you're more likely to meet one of these as well, because most typically, within reason, of course, that's usually part of the package deal.
Thinking about the lawful nature of them and that question of free will when it comes to angels, though, perhaps you are definitely a good party. You're trying to achieve good ends, but maybe doing so through means that this being finds disagreeable. Perhaps your methods are very chaotic as opposed to its lawful leanings. And so perhaps it might be fighting you not with the intent to kill you, but to stop you.
Yeah.
A difference of opinion, might lead to the exchange of blows.
It's true. It's probably not going to smite you unless you're purely evil. It's definitely got some rules about that, but it might just try to pick a fight with you to stop you. I completely agree. And it has no reservations and it has no regrets, unless, of course, it falls.
And, of course, it's arguably the, quote-unquote, weakest of the angels. The Deva's still no small thing to come up against. You're looking at an AC of 17. You're looking at more than 100 hit points. You're looking at magical attacks, a fly speed.
It can heal itself.
It can heal itself. It can heal you if you're nice to it.
So that then brings us to the second grouping of angels when we get in here, which is the planetars.
So we're going up a size category. These are large guys. And definitely going up in threat level and potential as well.
These guys are designed specifically to be the weapons of gods. So they're definitely going after something. They're not there just to kind of be helpful and handy. They're there to do some wicked good smites.
Fond of smiting.
Yes.
So
it says on there. Fond of smiting.
They're big, they're green, they're particularly mean to fiends. very happy with how that rhymed.
Oh, that was a delight, sir. I love that they're green. It's such a bizarre, quirky design. It's so unique. It's so different.
Why do you think they're green, though?
Probably just so you can tell them apart. That's a very technical perspective on it, but I do think it's a very classical look. It definitely reminds me of copper statues and that sort of thing. But I do love that's kind of a unique little quirk, or at least as unique as I've ever seen it.
Well, that's a good way of looking at it, actually. I'd not really thought of that before, but yeah, it does evoke that sort of, as you say, classical style. But yeah, it's cool. So these guys become stronger. You've got an armor class of 19. You're now looking at 200 hit points. You've got multi-attacks with great swords. And you also have to deal now with their divine awareness.
This is one of my favorite odd, quirky things that you get when you step up here, is that you can no longer lie to a planetar.
Which, if we're honest, I don't think there's a D&D group out there that's ever been entirely truthful.
Oh no, there's always that one person who's definitely, if not a liar, so much the hype man of the group. The bard's definitely over there talking about how big this shindig was, and the planetar's like, no, 6 people showed up and they didn't have that great a time.
It is not true that you invented the xylophone.
Why not? Why not tell a planetar that? That'll definitely do you good. Okay.
But yeah, magic attacks, you can't lie. Magic resistance, at-will spellcasting. You know, the idea of them being the weapons of the gods is pretty well founded. And then we start to get even more powerful.
Then we get to the Solar.
The Solar. Only 24 of them in existence, apparently. And probably for good reason.
Yeah, if you're encountering one of these, just, unless you're a legendary level, maybe just go away. Maybe just don't deal with this. If it's not after you, it's after something else. It's a big bad thing. Just go away.
I really like these guys, though. They have so much potential, especially as an ally. Imagine, going into this unwinnable battle or fight, for the fate of the end of the world or whatever, and you think, well, we'll sacrifice ourselves, but, it'll have been worth trying, and then one of these guys shows up, and suddenly all hope is not lost, and you're fighting alongside a creature that is like a step or two down from a god.
Yeah, and I mean, the big thing I'm looking at with this guy that caught my eye almost immediately is he doesn't have a huge amount of health. He doesn't have realistically that much more health than a planetar. Mostly his deal, he's so dang hard to hit. His AC is 21, and he's gonna hit you so fast. He's got plus 15 to hit you. If he rolls a 1, that's a 16.
Yeah.
Ow!
And on top of that, he doesn't even have to be personally wielding this gigantic sword of his. He can basically tell it to fly off and do its own thing while he flies majestically through the sky, raining divine fury upon you.
Literal divine fury and fire.
And another thing, to speak again to the potential of these guys, a fantastic idea in terms of what if you were facing a fallen Solar, like as the eventual big bad of your campaign. Their challenge rating's 21, so assuming you're fighting this thing on its own, even then, that's going to be a pretty big ask for anything less than like your, high level play, like your level 15 plus.
Yeah.
So, yeah, these guys are definitely nothing to sniff at. And as you say, even if he's not coming after you, if he's coming after something near you, you don't want to be there.
Yeah, and these things aren't really necessarily looking at you all that hard. At some point, you're ants in the giant scheme of this Solar raining down justice and fury and fire and all kinds of goodness and stuff. It's just, you're in the way of the smiting. Just move.
And even then, we haven't even mentioned the legendary actions. He can blind you. He can cause a sort of area of effect, huge damage outburst. We can look at teleportation on top of that, which it can do because it's a legendary action. That effectively makes it at will. Because it can be after each turn in order. So, on top of that AC 21, you don't even know where he's going to be necessarily in order for you to be able to hit him.
I guess the lesson here learned is maybe just don't make angels mad.
Good guys, not necessarily good to be around.
Thank you so much for joining us this week on The Bestiary. If you enjoyed what you saw, give us a like down below. Do you have any thoughts on the free will of angels? Give us a comment. We'd love to talk to you about it. Here's where you can watch some more of our videos, and here is where you can subscribe. Join us next week where we're going to be talking about animated objects.